What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the ASTROLABE. We are back. We are back like we've never been. Oh, got some good stuff for you here today. Latter half of the show is going to be a bit of a bummer. Got this LA fire thing that's happening, and that one hits a little too close to home. After some of you guys know, some of you may not. My wife and I lived in Southern California. She was born and raised there. And we lived there for a few years before we moved out to Texas. And we spent a lot of time right in the area where all these fires are happening. So it's a bit of a personal experience. Obviously not as personal for us as it is for the people who are actually involved in it. But we'll get into that here in a little bit. Got some other stuff to talk about before then. Do me a favor and hit the like button on your way in. Share the show. Tweet it out. Post it on, I don't know, where are people posting things these days? Gab? Facebook. Maybe we'll get some more Facebook posting here soon. Maybe I have to start streaming on Facebook again. We'll see. We'll see how long YouTube can go pissing me off before they finally burn the bridge and I turn my back on them. Follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. I'm streaming there, and I'm going to try to get this one wrapped in under 2 hours, approximately 2 hours, so that I can redirect over to Miranchuk now. That did not work out very well last night. He got attacked by the Boomer Tech gremlins and wound up not being able to do the show. So I'm very much looking forward to what he's got cooking for us tonight. I've got the auto redirect set up, so it'll send you right over there. All you have to do is just stay put where you're at, and YouTube will do the work. You can go rate him and tell him that King Pilled sent you. For now, though, let's kick this one off. Very first one here is I got to remember. I added some extra stuff to the bookmark, so I got to remember to pull that out here later. Very first one from friend of the show, LG Brandon Walsh. He somehow got access to a time machine and was able to capture my experience, his experience, all of our experience, what hearing Linkin Park Meteora for the first time in the early 2000s felt like. This brought back so many memories. The 3 CD deck and just the everything here, man. It's like I'm 12 again. 14. I don't remember exactly how old I was when this came out. I saw this one earlier today, and my app updated right as I was watching it. Didn't get to wind up saving it, and so fortunately, Mr. Brandon Walsh was here to save the day and contribute to the Labe. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. We got a Tucker Carlson impression in the wild. Tucker Carlson versus a wilderness. He nails it.
Good evening. I'm here in my secret getaway hideout, just enjoying the outdoors. Turns out that things are not as good in the forest as we believed they were. I spoke to an owl just today. He has many concerns. Turns out that just the other day, his humble tree home was raided by squirrels. They stole everything. When he went to the bears to see if they could make an arrest, they simply snarled and went back to sleep. Crime is surging in the forest. Acorns are being extorted. Mooses are humping deer against their will. Wolves are trafficking foxes. Ooh. When I had a conversation with a mole just last night, he denied any claim that he had anything to do with the trafficking in hopes that the foxes return home safely. If it was up to me, my furry friends would take back their woodland home. What's the matter? Did the squirrels steal the nuts between your legs as well?
Moose are humping deer against their will, and the laugh at the end. Man, I haven't listened to Tucker in too long. He's been dropping some bangers. We're gonna get a little more Tucker here by proxy here in just a bit. But before that, rumors going around Did Justin Trudeau really just rage quit because a 4chan user discovered he invests in racist cryptocurrencies? Have I mentioned that I absolutely love the time in which we live? Concerning behavior from the Canadian PM. This is on January 5. Be friends. Here's our green text. Be friends with Trudeau's financial advisor. Buddy tells me he got Trudeau into crypto last year. Just holds majors on Coinbase, but he did make a Solana wallet. Ask for the wallet address to snoop. Discover the Prime Minister of Canada owns $17,000 of a crypto token called Nigabutt. What did he mean by this? Nigabutt token. Is this what took him down? Is this what took Prime Minister Blackface down? Owning $17,456.74 worth of Nigabutt? I suppose we'll have to wait to see how the rumors pan out. Maybe he sticks it out. Maybe he stays there and he says, you know what? I'm proud of my Nigabutt holdings. You too should hold Nigabutt. Is this the biggest pump we've ever seen? Is the story beginning now? We'll have to wait to find out. Elon retweeted this guy yesterday, and this is interesting. I've never seen him before. Charlie Downs, strategist, broadcaster, Anglo-Zoomer. I scrolled through his timeline, and I saw a little bit of Orrin McIntyre reposting. He seems like he's positioned himself our guys adjacent, but some very interesting rhetoric coming out of our young British Zoomers.
Britain is not just an idea. Britain is not just playing cricket, drinking tea, eating fish and chips, and complaining about the weather. Britain is not just democracy and tolerance. Britain is you. Britain is me. It's everyone who's come before us and everyone who will follow. It's these isles and all of their children. It's everything this flag represents. The English, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish, all led by the principles of Christianity. Because let's not forget where each of those crosses came from. If Britain is to survive, we must move beyond the language of values. Our values are great, but they are not what we are ultimately fighting for. We are fighting for the British people, our history, our lifestyle, and our right to a secure, sovereign ancestral homeland where we can pursue our own destiny in peace.
Shout out to this young fellow. I'll be closely watching to see what comes of this. But he got the Elon retweet. He's getting the numbers. This is from he's a YouTuber apparently. British values, quote unquote, are not real. I haven't sat down and watched the whole thing. I've got a whole backlog of things I need to watch. But very interesting. Very interesting to now see this Britain is not an idea rhetoric. Started off with, which is kind of funny. This is sort of almost an anachronism that America as an idea has now leaked out. And people say Britain is an idea. Well, now we get the pushback. As we get the pushback in the United States, we get the pushback in Britain. Britain is not an idea. Britain is a nation. It's a people. Straight Buster. No way he was in on George Droid. Fidel's bastard was the secret agent behind the scenes in George Droid, and we never knew it. Oh, I got to write that one down. That's a good one. Mr. Oblivion. We fought a war over owning Nigabutt. You guys are... the only reason I do the show is just to give you guys a platform to start to post. The next Twitter is the comments or the live chat on the ASTROLABE. You heard it here first, folks. So yesterday... we got to pour one out here for the doomers, for the doom fappers, for the nothing ever happens fellas, for the Trump is just a Zionist plot fellows. Because if you've been following Stormy Waters, if you've been following Jason Miranchuk, Pete Quinones, myself, if you've been following us, then you know that Trump and Netanyahu hate each other. We've talked about this extensively. Yesterday, on Truth, Trump shared a clip of Jeffrey Sachs discussing how Obama and Netanyahu orchestrated wars by scaring the shit out of Americans. This was a Tucker interview, and Tucker caught some heat for this one. And here we go with Trump posting a video, a screenshot of Wall Street apes tweeting about it.
The war in Syria. And you may actually hear from grown-up reporters who are lying through their teeth or ignorant beyond imagining that, oh, the war in Syria, yes, Russia intervened in Syria. Well, do you know that that Obama tasked the CIA to overthrow the Syrian government starting 4 years before Russia intervened? What kind of nonsense is that? And how many times did the New York Times report on Operation Timber Sycamore, which was the presidential order to the CIA to overthrow Bashar al-Assad? 3 times in 10 years. This is not democracy. This is a game. And it's a game of narrative. Why did the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003? Well, first of all, it was completely phony pretenses. It wasn't, oh, we were so wrong, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They actually did focus groups in the fall of 2002 to find out what would sell that war to the American people. Abe Schultzke, if you want to know the name of the PR genius. They did focus groups on the war. They wanted the war all the time. They had to figure out how to sell the war to the American people, how to scare the shit out of the American people. It was a phony war. Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually. You know that? It's weird.
Uh-oh.
And the way it is that Netanyahu had from 1995 onward the theory that the only way we're going to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah is by toppling the governments that support them. That's Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a bitch, sorry to tell you. Because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way. But that war was totally phony. So what is this democracy versus dictatorship? Come on. These are not even sensible terms.
Trump rejecting the democracy versus dictatorship. False choice. Yeah, Trump is not a Netanyahu fan. And the entire most of Israel are not Netanyahu fans. He is running out the clock, and it's very heartening to see Trump signal boosting Jeffrey Sachs talking about this specifically. Politically Catholic says underlying all of these rejections of nations or ideas is people's rejections of subjectivism. Classical philosophy has never been this back. And when subjectivism falls, the Enlightenment won't be far behind. Yes. Netanyahu. I forgot about that. Thank you, Kanye. Very cool. Tagging on to that, President Trump says he understands why Russia doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO and blames Joe Biden for the war in Ukraine. There's so much other stuff that's going on that I can understand why people haven't really taken the time to appreciate just how significant it is for the incoming president of the United States to make a statement like this regarding Russia.
So, a big part of the problem was Russia for many, many years, long before Putin said you could never have NATO involved with Ukraine. Now, they've said that. That's been, written in stone. And somewhere along the line, Biden said, no, they should be able to join NATO. Well, then Russia has somebody right on their doorstep, and I could understand their feeling about that. But there were a lot of mistakes made in that negotiation. And when I heard the way that Biden was negotiating, I said, you're going to end up in a war. And it turned out to be a very bad war. And it could escalate. That war could escalate to be much worse than it is right now.
They can never join NATO.
Well, my view is that it was always understood. In fact, I believe that they had a deal, and then Biden broke it. They had a deal which would have been a satisfactory deal to Ukraine and everybody else, but that Biden said, no, you have to be able to join NATO. So, a big part of...
Sorry, I'm sending some notes about Benjamin Matisyahu and Justin Trudeau being involved in George Droid. Stay tuned. You may hear more about that in the near future. This has been the entire, this is absolute heresy to the entire State Department NGO blob world to even suggest that this might be the case, that Russia might have been provoked. Someone might have poked the bear. This is unspeakable heresy. And Trump's just saying it matter-of-factly. It's very, very heartening to have an incoming administration that not only recognizes this, but has the absolute madman as the front man who's willing to just go out and say it. Speaking of absolute madmen, Fetterman's making moves. I've been telling you guys, keep an eye on this guy. Keep an eye on him. He's making moves. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with. He absolutely excoriated his own party for voting against the Lake and Riley Act today, which simply makes it easier for ICE to detain and deport illegals.
To remind everybody that we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of migrants here illegally that have convicted of crimes. And why, I don't know why, who wants to defend that, to allow them to remain in our nation for that? And now, if you're here illegally and you're committing crimes and those things, I don't know why anybody thinks that it's controversial that they all need to go.
Do you think that this was one of, if not the biggest issue for this election?
Well, I think if we can't, there's 47 of us in the Senate, and if we can't pull up with 7 votes, if we can't get at least 7 out of 47, and if we can't, then that's the reason why we lost. That's one of them. That's one of why we lost, in part.
Go ahead.
Brett, if you think
To remind everybody.
Now, I know that there's a healthy amount of based Fetterman. I think actually Elon quote tweeted one of these things and said based Fetterman, and there's a lot of the standard. I don't know what you would call it. It's like the lukewarm milquetoast new right Republican commentariat that they're like, oh yeah, Fetterman's going to become a Republican. Even Scott Pressler had a conversation with him that someone posted a video of where he said, you should become a Republican. We'd be happy to bring you in. And then there's others who are like, oh, these stupid Republicans getting suckered in by another Democrat, just telling them things they want to hear. Look at his voting record. He's, super progressive, yada, yada, yada. And I think both of those are wrongheaded. I don't want to see Fetterman become a Republican. I want to see Fetterman run the fucking Democratic Party. I want to see Fetterman be the Chuck Schumer for the Democrats. And I think that there's a very good chance of that. Again, this is kind of like the like Andrew Tate running for Prime Minister of Britain, and people are like, oh, silly. If you are just immediately writing these things off just without much thought, because I don't know, he's a big retarded oaf who walks around in a hoodie and shorts. Apologies to Jason Miranchuk for putting that image in his head. If you're one of those. If you're writing these guys off for those reasons, you haven't caught up. You haven't updated your operating system, your political operating system, because these sorts of guys, there's going to be more and more demand for them, especially after the sorts of things that are happening in the UK right now and in California, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But I think we are entering the age of the chud, and we're going to get Republican chuds. We're going to get poser chuds. We're going to get Democrat chuds. But either way, we're getting chuds. And so, as a chud, a representative of the chuds, I'm very happy to see Fetterman making these kinds of moves. Because, I mean, there's always going to be an opposition party. There's always going to be subversion. There's always going to be the people who are pandering for votes and all that. Like, if you think that that's ever going away, you're silly. You're engaging with politics on completely naive, silly pretenses. That's never going away. What I want is a better caliber of enemy, a better caliber of opponent. And this is we're going to keep tracking this over the next 3.9 years. We're going to be tracking the what I'm expecting to be a takeover of the Democrat Party by the Maha movement. Here's another one from him talking about Greenland. And this will be a nice little segue into our Greenland conversation.
These parts. Go ahead.
Can I talk about like there's a lot of talk about Greenland, for example. Now, and I know there's a lot of freakouts, and of course I would never support taking it by force. But I do think it's a responsible conversation if they were open to acquiring it and whether just buying it outright. I mean, if anyone think that's bonkers, it's like, well, remember the Louisiana purchase? Oh, I think Alaska was a great deal too. $50 million, I think it was. It was referred to as Stewart's Folly, and now that was Alaska now. So, I mean, open to having all kinds of conversations as well. And now I don't think it's not helpful to freak out, but some things might work out, some may not, but that's part of an ongoing dialogue. But he hasn't even taken office in 2 weeks, and we really need to pace ourselves if we're going to freak out over every last tweet or every last conversation or press conference. Because, but
That's good. That's a good one, John.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, you know, we are here to work together.
Yeah.
And some things we can agree or disagree, but I think that's.
And honestly, like, I think this is entirely self-serving, but I also think it's sincere. I think that I think Fetterman's a real dude. I think he's someone's puppet. They all are, but grading on the curve of congressman, I think Fetterman's a real dude, and he just kind of says what he thinks, and he's just going to kind of do whatever he wants within the constraints that are laid out for him. Yeah, Mr. Oblivion says steel sharpens steel. If the opposition is better, we're better. Straight Buster says, I've really come around on the ogre. Yes. I'm going to condition you all to become ogre appreciators. That's my secret plot. So this is a clip here from The Art of the Surge, which is Tucker Carlson's documentary. And this is his producer, Justin Wells. Says, we just returned from Greenland. Here's what we saw today.
Guys, where are we heading?
We're heading to Greenland. Gonna talk to the locals. Gonna talk to people. See what they think about America. Just have a good time.
The whole town is showing up, I think, at the airports.
Let's go to Greenland.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I mean, this is sort of my world as an outdoorsman, as someone who sort of travels to remote parts of the world. I love it.
Greenland need help.
So what do you need the help with?
Medicine, social, everything, job, everything.
So you like the U.S.?
I like U.S.
Well, we're leaving the local museum in Nuuk. Just absolutely cool to see the old hunting styles, the clothes. It's really amazing. This is his original spot. It's where he moved. This is where it all started out here. Awesome trip to Greenland. Super warm welcome. People excited about Trump. They're excited about America. I'm definitely looking forward to coming back and getting to spend a little bit more time on the ground myself.
Very strongly recommend The Art of the Surge. I didn't. This was my first clue that season 2 was out. We watched season 1 as part of the Schizo streams in the King Pill Discord, which you can be a part of, kingpill.com. Just wanted to point out this. Where was it here? This big old statue right here is a statue of, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. It's spelled Egede. Hans Egede, I don't know. But a monument in Nuuk, Greenland. It commemorates the Dano-Norwegian Lutheran missionary who founded Nuuk in 1728. Funded by Greenlanders, the statue lies on a hill near the shore above Nuuk Cathedral in the historical Old Nuuk area of the city. Very based, if I do say so myself. Now, you saw that shot of them flying out on Trump Force One, and here is a shot from inside the cockpit. And notice, you can see from this first shot, notice something about the pilots. And this is a full throttle takeoff out of Greenland after an epic day. Big plane, short runway. Need some highly competent pilots.
Guys, full thrust takeoff, leaving Greenland. You see some high performance stuff.
We are aboard Trump Force One on a full thrust takeoff. Take a look, everybody.
Oh yeah. Ground speed's picking up. Definitely a shorter runway than a lot of the. I'm gonna send it.
How's it right here?
And select. This is live over green. You want a left turn next one? Left turn, and then give me direct.
Look at him bank that thing.
There's him. VNav.
These boys are cooking.
VNav first. Okay, got it. LNav. Straighten that line out for you.
3:30 in the afternoon, sun's already setting.
That's fine. Absolutely breathtaking. Place. Press one. Left sub, F takeoff. That is a full thrust takeoff.
Awesome day, boys and girls. We'll see you in Florida in a couple of hours.
Greenland great again.
Let's do it.
Man, it's beautiful up there. I lived in lived in Norway and spent a little bit of time in Sweden right after high school. It's in the blood. I had to go commune with the ancestors. I'm like 50% Swedish and Norwegian, and it's just in the blood. Those northern lands just speak to my soul. Andrew says Bernie, Fetterman, and Trump all have the candor appeal. They speak their minds candidly. I think that's a generational shift. Boomers liked the focus group tested BS. Newer generations like candor. That's a very good point. And Samoa Bobby here says we can just call Greenland East Dakota. That's frickin' send it. That has to happen. East Dakota. We need to get this to the White House. I don't know if they've thought of it yet, but they need to. Jason said the amazing PR rehab of the Trump family in just a few months should be studied. Yeah, indeed. And then there was one other point I wanted to make here based on what did I see? Straight Buster, reminder that this started years ago with Trump posting a meme about building a Trump tower in Greenland. I remember that too. Yes. That's everyone's like, he's just memeing. No, he wasn't memeing. He was entirely real. And remember when he appointed he announced the appointment of the ambassador to Denmark, Ken Howery, another OG PayPal Mafia guy. He said in there that a top priority was purchasing Greenland. And so that's why he was appointing him to that position, because he's going to interface with Denmark as they figure this out. So this is absolutely not just memeing. It's they're sending Trump Force One with the son of the emperor to go and some key personnel to go scout it out. Like it's happening, folks. There's no way it's not happening. It's happening. Borp says send it is this entire administration's plan. Yes, right. Just send it. Just fucking send it. Let's go. All right, let's keep it cooking here. This one, every once in a while, I see a joke or a meme or a tweet or something like that, and I'm like, man, why didn't I think of that first? I just get mad when I see it. I don't like it anymore. It just makes me mad now. I wish I would have thought of it first. This is one of those. The Don Rowe Doctrine from the New York Post. Trump's vision for the hemisphere. So Greenland is our land. I think East Dakota is better, but I appreciate the thought. 51st state for Canada, Gulf of America, and then look at this one, Panamaga Canal. That one goes hard. The Panamaga Canal, I think we need to rename it. Honestly, sorry, Panamanians. It's going to be the Panamaga Canal from now on. If you complain too much, then we're going to rename your country Panamaga too. And you're just going to deal with it. Andrew says, wait for the Trump Tower and Havana meme to drop. Bet on it. Yes. Cuban Rubio isn't Secretary of State for nothing. Yeah, once they're beginning to acquire all this territory in the Western Hemisphere to protect their borders, Cuba's just a matter of time. It makes too much sense. I've got some more stuff on this now here. As some people are like, why is this happening? Why does this matter? Why do they care about Greenland? Well, here, look at this map. When you look at the world this way, it makes a whole lot more sense. Greenland here, Canada and the U.S. over here, Alaska, and then Russia right here, Europe right down here at the bottom. This is from @Squatson, says, the massive sudden push for Greenland and Canada may not be a meme, but will have real strategic ramifications. The article was always, or the Arctic, is supposed to be the Arctic, was always going to be a battleground, and the U.S. would definitely like to secure new trade routes and control their northern borders with Russia. When you think about it this way, it's a lot clearer. You don't really think of us having like northern borders with Russia, but from this perspective, we actually do. And Joshua Steinman shared this from J5 Killer. He said, if you're an American who believes in global warming, you should be rooting for Trump to get Greenland. So here's this passage. As ice is melting up here, this Arctic passage is going to open up. Here's a green text. It says, why does Trump keep joking about Canada becoming the 51st state? Why does Trump keep joking about buying Greenland? Why does Trump keep talking about taking back the Panama Canal? The answer, for those of you who are not familiar with geopolitics, is shipping. Canada and Greenland, and by extension Denmark, control the Northwest Passage, which, due to ice melting, is set to become one of the largest shipping routes on Earth. Canada can't defend it against its other claimant, Russia, without U.S. support. America is also going down the path of wanting to further control shipping routes to maintain their hegemony. While these come off as jokes now, make no mistake, these are long-term U.S. strategic objectives. Whether through conquest, economic partnership, or some other means, the U.S. will eventually control these routes. Whether under Trump or someone down the line, he's just the one putting the idea out into the atmosphere. Joshua Steinman said this plus the Panama Canal. He's the only president in decades capable of actually thinking strategically. I've seen it up close. It's a breath of fresh air. The first president of the United States since Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah, here's the population centers in Canada. The overwhelming vast majority of it. Now here's the thing. I've seen a lot of Americans who are like, why don't they settle anything up here? Why are they just all crammed down here next to the border? Because getting up here, I remember one time I drove with a friend of mine from Seattle down in this area, up here and all the way up to Prince George it's actually central BC. You'd think it's northern BC. It's central BC because we were like halfway up and it took us 14 hours, I think, to go from Seattle up to there. And the overwhelming majority of it is a 2-lane highway that's like 2 or 3 hours between little civilizational spots, which are like a little multi-purpose general store with a gas station and maybe a little motel. And that's basically it. And then 2 or 3 hours is just the most desolate country that you've ever seen. The overwhelming vast majority of this, as of right now, is basically not even settleable. The settlements that are there are the ones that can be there. It's incredibly hostile, and there isn't anywhere close to the infrastructure available to resettle it anymore. So that's the reason why. This isn't just a matter of like, oh, well, Canadians are just diet Americans who want to be close to America. They actually, in a lot of ways, don't. But these are just simple like economic and climatological realities that it's just not feasible to really live up in a lot of these areas. Now, it could become that way. And there's a lot of potential for, especially as we have growing interest in terraforming other planets. Well, this is a pretty good place to practice. Another one here. Russians with Attitude says direct physical control over Canada and Greenland would put the U.S. on equal footing with Russia in the Arctic Circle. The race for the Arctic will be one of the great games of the 21st century. Not even getting into all the potential implications of a crustal shift of some type, or the one theory is that the Earth's crust shifts; it rotates around the core. The other theory is the phrase just completely escaped my mind, but it basically relocates it pivots, it tilts, and begins spinning on a different axis. These are theories that have existed primarily in the schizo posting world, but I have pretty good reason to believe that these actually extend quite a bit farther up out of just the schizo posters, and that there are people, very serious people, who take this issue very seriously. If that was to happen, then essentially the effect would be, based on the different models that I've seen, one of the effects of it would be that the Arctic would become like equatorial, essentially. And so suddenly you'd have a mass melting. Now, there's a degree to which I don't put a whole lot of thought in this, because it's like, if something like that happens, we're talking about civilization being returned to the Stone Age. So positioning, in my view, trying to position to like take advantage of something like that happening is kind of silly, unless you're talking about positioning off the planet altogether, which I think is one of the motivations behind, if not Elon, some of the people who want to get off the planet, because they are aware of these cataclysmic cycles that happen that like Randall Carlson talks about, and they're anticipating, they know that the clock is ticking and we're due for another one like that. Who knows exactly what the scale is going to be? It could be anything from, like something that's really, really bad, but it doesn't completely destroy civilization, to, we get reduced to the Stone Age. I think positioning for getting reduced to the Stone Age is silly. There's no point in that. But I do think that factor plays at least some of a role in all of this positioning and jockeying. So Powerful Mutual at Neo Americana. Used to be Curtis LeMay did nothing wrong. Now it's Lieutenant Surge did nothing wrong. He says, the crazy thing is that if we annex Canada and Greenland, we become the largest nation on Earth by land area, with Russia a distant second. Boggling to think of. And this person says, what you do with Canadian votes, they could solidify Democrats. And he said, simple. Canada will be an unincorporated territory, same status as Puerto Rico. No electoral power in federal elections. Local and provincial governments would still exist. This is a normal intermediate stage for incorporating a new territory into the U.S. Eventually, Canadian provinces would be admitted individually. Every U.S. state besides the original 15 and Texas has gone through this process, and I don't think it should be considered insulting to Canadians. It's part of the process of becoming a state. Canada could make a case that it should be admitted as a state right away like Texas was, but in my opinion, Canada is too large to be admitted as a single state. I think it should be admitted by province, and the most seamless way to do this is by annexing it as a territory first. Texas also had the unusual history of being a de facto American colony on Mexican soil before Texan independence. This does not apply to Canada, but anything could happen. Anyway, regardless, I'm really not that worried about the political orientation of Canadians. And then he continued, if I come back to the original tweet here, he said, in my opinion, Canadians have a lot to benefit from becoming a part of the USA, even as an unincorporated territory. Canada and the U.S. have a shared history, language, and culture, and Canada has a large land area that is difficult to defend with the population and economy it currently has. Canada also seems listless right now. Strong Canadian identity does exist, but it seems that is in a minority of Canadians. Most Canadians instead seem to identify as not Americans, which, besides being unhealthy, is halfway to being an American. Bulgarians, and having lived in Canada for several years, I think this assessment is correct. I think there is legitimate Canadian identity, but it's definitely a minority, and I think much stronger or much broader than the legitimate Canadian identity is the we're not Americans identity, which I got a lot of when I was up there. Bulgarians do not identify as not Americans because no one could ever confuse the two. Canadians and Americans are so similar that a few differences get emphasized to the point of pathology. If they became Americans, I think they would paradoxically become much freer to have their own identity, the way that Californians, Texans, Minnesotans, and Virginians do. Regarding the political question, I'm not very concerned about Canada swinging U.S. politics. The admittance of Canada or her provinces, preferred by me, would be an opportunity for both national parties to court the Canadian voter base. The outcomes of that might surprise people. But the California phenomenon is real enough, and though I disagree on the exact cause, most people think it's due to a profundity of libtards, but I think that's a half-truth. That is the reason I think Canada, and California for that matter, should be broken up to make smaller states. Okay, so that was that thought. And I agree with basically everything you said there. I don't really have... It's over my pay grade to try to assess like which method should be used. I'm sure people have already hashed it out, and me having an opinion on it isn't going to change one way or the other how it actually bears out. But I kind of suspect they're just going to add it as one or two states. And in which case, well, I hope they do it right, because there is the potential for it getting really fucky. But, if it's done either way, I'm fully in support of the idea of legitimate territorial expansion. And I think this is the time to be doing it. There was something I shared. I didn't pull it up for this stream, but there was a guy, I think it was Bowtied Ranger, who was tweeting about this. Like, it's cool to have this territorial expansion age upon us again. And some guy was like, "Oh, he's a globalist." He was like, "Stop being a fucking nerd. Like, be happy about territorial expansion of your nation, and don't just be a fucking nerd about everything." And that's just what I'm going to start telling people from now on. Just stop being a fucking nerd. We're getting territorial expansion. It's awesome. On net, it's going to be great. $5 super chat from Samoa Bob. He says, a lot of Canadian culture is look how different we are to America. And then they tell you the one thing they do that's not American. Yes, this is very true. I know we got a lot of Leaf brothers out here, and you guys got to admit it. This is very true. I think Canadians generally get a tough shake. I think that people are harder on the Canadians than they ought to be. There's the perception. Some of the hardest, most badass dudes I've ever known were Canadians. They're basically, especially up north, they're culturally very, very similar to like Appalachia. Very handy, very hardy, and they live in the frickin' Arctic, so they have to be very good at fixing things, very good at working with their hands. Just a simple people, very, very Chud-like. Okay, I got a couple of posts here, a couple long posts about Europe and the United States, and a lot of the jockeying that's happening now as Europe is getting more and more insecure and unstable, while the United States is beginning a trajectory in the opposite direction. First one here is Malmsbury Man. He says, I know a lot of European friends and also American rightists don't like seeing, quote, anti-European sentiment coming from the U.S. right. And obviously a lot of it is childish. Cernovich is still seething about French waiters being rude to him. But the fact remains that Europe is extremely weak, and its utter dependence on the U.S. has made it slavish. There's very little to respect in Europe today besides its past, and frankly, that's not worth much consideration from the U.S. It's good to respect the past, but we live in the present and we plan for the future. On present trends, it's hard to see Europe having much of a future. That's the hard truth. I'm hopeful that there are young people in Europe who can bring Europe back to strength and vitality, but that's probably not going to happen as long as the U.S. is your overlord. A rupture in the fiction of good relations would be helpful for both sides. The U.S. is rediscovering the Monroe Doctrine, or the Don Roe Doctrine, in the face of Chinese expansionism in the Pacific and a race with Russia to control the Arctic. Old European territorial claims over Western Hemisphere lands they can't possibly defend in their desperately weakened state make phony and performative respect for Europe a foolish policy for the U.S. A future war between Europe and Russia over Greenland is not what the U.S. wants. Better to take Greenland peacefully from Europe now while Europe is weak and under U.S. control. Meanwhile, Europeans are not even sovereign over their own territory. The wastes and wrecks of the world are overflowing out of their teeming breeding grounds into the heart of European civilization, and no one will do the most natural thing in the world: remove them. That situation has been brought about more than anything by an imposition of American customs and mores on Europe. Can you say that American stewardship of Europe has been good when it has allowed this, of all things, to happen? The question answers itself. I love America. I love Europe. But I think for the good of both, it's time to stand apart. And I wholeheartedly agree. I don't even have anything to add to it. Reminder, Malmsbury Man was the guy who tweeted that. Go to kingpill.substack.com or just look up Kingpill on Substack, and you get the links to everything that I cover on the show here today. I posted yesterday's episode today, and this one I'll get posted either tonight or tomorrow. And that pushes it out onto all the audio podcast platforms as well. If you're listening there, do me a favor, subscribe and give me a 5-star rating and review, and hit the like button here on YouTube. We're at 37 likes with 108 watching. Come on, guys. Let's get these numbers up. Let me catch up on your guys' comments here. Straight Buster says, Stormy was saying on the Inquisition that U.S. military is jumping hard on Arctic warfare training. Interesting. I haven't listened to that one yet. But I would suspect, number one, this is battle over the Arctic. Number two, I think we're going to see a lot more stuff happening in Antarctica over the next couple of decades. And number three, I think there's preparation for actually going into space more, going to Mars, going to different asteroids or whatever, and preparing for those sorts of environments. And the closest thing that we have to replicate that for practice purposes is probably the Arctic. Okay, some more of the comments here. Matt Pierce says similar things will happen in Antarctica in 2048. Quote, after 2048, Antarctica could be carved up between nations like every other land mass and surrounding ocean and slowly relieved of its resources. Interesting. Do me a favor and drop a link in the group chat on Twitter. If you're the same Matt Pierce, I suspect you are. Drop a link in there. I'd be interested to read more about that. Andrew says, doesn't make sense for Elon because Mars is just as dangerous as Earth. If the crust displacement theory is true, the moon would be the safest. That's interesting because Elon, at least publicly, doesn't seem to have much consideration for the moon, doesn't think much of it. And I don't know that Elon is actually completely read in or motivated by that sort of thing. But he said a couple of things that have made me go, We put gravy on our French fries. Hey, man, poutine, when done well, poutine is very, very good. It can be too salty. It's easy to make it too salty, and then it just kind of makes you feel parched. But when it's done well, poutine is very, very good. Mr. Miranchuk says, my stance on Canada joining the States is the same as Ukraine becoming part of Russia. If it makes life better and safer, then it must be done. A pragmatic leaf. Americans always love Alberta. Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was in high school, so this would have been early 2000s, I remember having friends from Alberta telling us about the checks that they get from the government every year because of the budget surplus, because of all the oil money. They were getting checks. This is like early 2000s. They were getting like each person was getting like $5,000 a year or something like that. Just a check from the government. I was like, man, never heard of such a thing. Could such a thing even happen? A government that pays you? All right, you guys are jamming in here. I'm not going to be able to keep up with everything for now. I want to keep the show going because I've got quite a bit still, and I want to finish in time to send you guys over to Mr. Miranchuk. So here's another similar post from Huntsman, one of our best posters. He says, as a great man once said, let me see the context of this first. So he quote tweeted disclose.tv saying, European Union will, quote, not tolerate a takeover of Greenland by the United States. France warned Trump against threatening the bloc's sovereign borders. Lots of bluster. Huntsman says, we'll know they're serious when they withdraw from NATO, expel U.S. forces, blow up the Eurodollar, begin sanctioning the U.S., and ban their ocean carriers from making billions in profits on U.S. commerce. Let's see how much spine they really have. And this guy, Andrew, says, I think we disagree on a lot, but I find your thinking and analysis insightful. What's the best national security argument you think can be made for the USA purchasing Greenland? Seems like grandiose ambition instead of strategic thinking to me, but open to hearing otherwise. He says, two things happening at once. One, Denmark has been an unreliable security ally for a while now. This pressures them to know their place, especially with their de facto national flag carrier, Maersk, being such twits about its obligations to the U.S. Number two, Greenland has extremely relevant location and vast resources for the U.S.'s fight for the future, both of which have been heavily sought for years by China. And Francis Lumiere says, do you think other independent countries are your fucking vassals or what? Beyond imagining allies are in fact rivals. And this is his response. As a great man once said, I have neither the time nor the inclination to explain myself to a man who rises and sleeps under the blanket of the very freedom that I provide, and then questions the manner in which I provide it. In other words, Denmark and most of Europe have been net free riders for a long time. The U.S. has allowed it due to a transatlantic orientation rooted in the shared sacrifices of 2 world wars and a common interest in defeating the Soviet communists. This is not that world anymore, and Europe, as a body politic comprised of your supposed independent countries, continues to arrogantly avail itself of U.S. energy, U.S. security, U.S. capital, and U.S. markets while plunging headlong into every stupid, self-destructive idea fathomable that the U.S. indirectly subsidizes. The fact that the EU and its independent countries want to continue to debase themselves and sacrifice their heritable, cultural, and financial wealth at the altars of migratory conquest, Mother Gaia, and Sino-Russian lucre while leeching endless blood and treasure from the U.S. should be of no concern to us. And it galls the highbrow technocrats in Belgium that Trump has the audacity to call them on their shit, triggering that now familiar postmodern European antibody response of snidely attacking the one guy and his supporters who dares to speak the critical truth out loud. If you want to play at being independent countries, then I pray you find the testicular fortitude to shake off the yoke of your enslavement to the false gods of globalism and actually be a collection of sovereign nations, rather than a bunch of simpering geldings who reflexively bite the hand that feeds. Barring that, go sit in the corner like well-mannered children while our rough men, with their day-class offensive methods, go about the business of defending your crumbling, overregulated fiefdoms until you're grown up enough to face the reality of the shambling carcasses most of your, quote, independent countries have become. Whew! I believe that is what is known as a rod from God. And again, I have basically nothing to add to that because he said it all himself. Now, I can't find... oh, here. It was right here. Close this out. Stop sharing. I need to double check. All right, the other ones that I still have, other tabs, are about the LA fires, which we're going to get into now. So first of all, got another Josh Steinman tweet here. Our president is a time traveler, folks. 4 months ago.
And you have so much water, and all those fields that are right now barren, the farmers would have all the water they needed. And you could revert water up into the hills where you have all the dead forests, where the forests are so brittle. Because no place is like California. I go to Austria. The head of Austria tells me, we have trees that are much more flammable than what you have in California. We never have forest fires because they maintain their forests. And you have all that water that could be used as water, what they call water flow, where the water...
It's called rain, folks. It's called water flow. Maybe learn.
Where the land would be damp. And you'd stop many of these horrible fires that are costing billions and billions of dollars by the federal government, etc. So one thing I'm going to do for California, vote for me, California. I'm going to give you safety. I'm going to give you a great border. And I'm going to give you more water than almost anybody has. And the farmers up north are going to be able to use 100% of their land, not 1% of their land. And you have so much.
He's going to give you more water than anyone else. And he actually won a very healthy percentage of the vote in California. See, here's the thing. Even in Southern California, there's a tremendous number of very good, genuinely based people who live there. I learned this living first up in the valley near where these fires are happening. Even there's a pretty good number of people who are not California shitlibs. And then we moved out to the Inland Empire, lived in the Redlands area, which is kind of like between Riverside and Palm Springs. And it was like basically living in Trump country. There's Trump signs everywhere, trucks driving around with big mega flags behind them. Way more Trump bumper stickers than at the time the Biden stickers. And this would have been like 2020, around the 2020 election. I think California has the most Republican voters of any state in the country, which is due to their sheer population. But I think it's very easy for, this is kind of a personal thing for me from having lived there and having so many friends there. It's a genuinely just beautiful, wonderful place with many, many really good people. And I know it's memes, but I know there's a lot of sentiment behind some of those memes, like, forget the Californians, just cut off the entire state, let it fall off into the Pacific. And that's the exact wrong position to have. The correct position is we're going to retake California. We're going to drop the commies in the Pacific, and we're going to restore its majesty and free our poor brothers and sisters who are being oppressed by these commies. This is another one. This is 3 months ago on Joe Rogan. Again, our president predicting exactly what's going to happen.
They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why don't you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north. Water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. I could have water for all of that land water for your forests. You know, your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You know, you could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And you know, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. And all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
And get rid of the trees that are fallen that, are
like... Kate reminds us, I'd forgotten about this, that Trump won Beverly Hills. So Beverly Hills, you would think, is absolute shitlib central. And it is. It very much is. They're fed up. More people living in Beverly Hills voted for Trump than voted for Kamala. Right in the belly of the beast. Our good friend, where'd it go? I saw the tweet. Just saw the comment just a second ago. Good friend Samoa Bob says, as your on-the-ground reporter here for the LA fires and as someone who's lived his whole life in LA, these fires are the worst I've ever seen. The speed at which they're moving is insane. So the main fire that has been causing the most damage is the one in the Palisades. And it is, last I saw, it's about 16,000 acres, and it has been advancing at a speed of 9 to 10 acres a minute. Think about that. 9 to 10 acres a minute. There's 100-mile-an-hour winds blowing through here. And I remember that. There was really big fires. I think it must have been in 2019, thinking about, I don't think it was 2020. I think it was 2019. It may have been end of 2019, beginning of 2020. Somewhere there were really big fires that had us like packing a go bag and getting ready to leave. And we're like right in the middle of a basically urban area. But these fires don't need, when they get cooking, they don't need lots of brush and debris to keep themselves going. They just start absolutely obliterating through neighborhoods, towns, all over the place. And this area in the Palisades that's been wiped out is some of the most beautiful neighborhoods and homes that you'll ever see. Some of these homes are old homes. I actually asked Grok, let me pull this up real quick and see, how old are the homes that burned in the Palisades? The houses that burned in the Pacific Palisades during the recent fire varied widely in age. Some homes in the area were relatively new, with posts on X indicating that around 60% of homes were less than 15 years old due to high property turnover and development. However, there were also older homes, including some that were built in the 1950s, and even a century-old landmark known as the Business Block, which housed a historic Starbucks, built in 1924 that was destroyed in the fire. Here's a couple of videos of this area, and this is something that hit pretty close to home for us because Amy... when she lived down there, she worked all in this area. She was a behavior therapist that worked with largely autistic children, and they were all from really wealthy families that lived around in this neighborhood. So she's spent more than a decade. Some of her most formative memories have all been in this area, and it's just gone, just absolutely leveled. Oh, this video here is I know exactly where this video is being taken. It's an area that she's spent years of her life all in this area, and everything's gone. Library's gone, grocery store's gone, gas station's gone. This is now the largest, most destructive fire in California history from the reports that I was seeing. More than 1,000 structures taken out just by this fire. And there's like 3 other fires that are all burning around in the same area. They're all 0% contained. No containment whatsoever. They are just completely free. These were like majestic, multi-million-dollar homes, just beautiful, beautiful manicured neighborhoods. Like it was like good for the soul to just drive through them. Some of the most beautiful places that I've ever seen. This is billions and billions of dollars of destruction. The houses are just completely leveled. And this is just like this is the I can't remember the name of it. It's like the town square. Basically, this is just it's heartrending to see this footage. Someone here in the comment in the live chat mentioned CB says lots of Hollywood producers, actors, and writers in the Palisades. Well, check this out. Steve Gutenberg.
It's an important announcement I wonder if I could just make. Here on Palisades Drive, if anybody has a car and they leave their car, leave the keys in the car so that we can move your car so that these fire trucks can get up Palisades Drive.
Yeah.
What's happening is people take their keys with them as if they're in a parking lot. This is not a parking lot.
Yeah.
We really need people to move their cars. So if you leave your car in Palisades Drive, leave the key in there so a guy like me can move your cars and get them up there so that these fire trucks can get up there. It's really, really important.
Thank you for talking to us live, sir. What's your name?
My name is Steve Gutenberg.
Steve, do you live in this area?
I live in the area. Yeah, I live right up the hill, and thank goodness everybody back. But I have friends up there right now, and they can't evacuate because it's stuck on Palisades Drive.
Yeah. And you're an actor.
Yeah, I'm an actor.
Okay, now you look familiar. You look familiar to me now.
Yeah.
So, sir, do you have family up there? I was just talking to that gentleman. He has a mom who's stuck up in the hills.
Yeah, there are people stuck up there. So we're trying to clear Palisade Drive, and I'm walking up there as far as I can, moving cars. But people don't take their keys with them as if it's a parking lot. There are families up there. There are pets up there. There are people who really need help.
And you told us that this is one of those situations. We have seen this. People are not able to move. We were in our live truck. We couldn't even move. They told us to bust a U-turn. I've never seen traffic this slow.
Well, of course, we've got a huge fire up there. We've got huge winds right now. And it's really important for people to help each other. It's really important for everybody to band together. And don't worry about your personal property. Just get out. Get your loved ones and get out. I have friends up there that can't get out right now.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
They've been given
A lot of these roads up in these neighborhoods are really tight and winding. Just tons of brush and trees and plants and stuff around it, and it's just an absolute nightmare situation. For people who are familiar with the area, we lived up in the valley. We lived in the Canoga Park area, and I used to take Topanga Canyon several times a week. Take Topanga Canyon all the way down to PCH, and then PCH into Culver City. And so, I've driven through this area so many times, and it's been occupied. It's been like an occupied territory, governed and controlled by a bunch of communists, and it's genuinely one of the most beautiful areas in the country. And it's an absolute shame that this is happening. I have a gorilla in my office. What are you doing, little gorilla? What'd you find? Is that for me? Oh, it's a neck squisher, huh? That should actually be pretty useful. I could use one of those. Thanks for bringing it to me, man.
Watch him.
You stomping? You want to say hi to everyone?
I want to see the boy with the white cane, Daddy.
I'll show you that video later, okay? You want to say hi? Just wave to everyone. There's people watching. I'm doing a live stream right now. There's people who are watching. Say hi.
Hi.
All right. I need you to go back out, okay?
What's in here?
That's
Is it made from carmine color?
I don't know what it's made from, but it's Daddy's treats. I need you to go back out now, okay? Can you close the door behind you? Watch your head. Thank you, bud. Yeah, pig Dirk on the loose. There was a couple other comments here. Vulpus Persona says the Getty compound survived. That's good to hear. I saw some videos when I was getting ready for the show. I saw videos of the flames that were right up on the edge of it. So if it actually did survive, then that's good to hear. I mean, it's the Gettys are terrible people, and it's still good to have these great monuments, and it sits up on the hill. It's beautiful. It's an iconic landmark. This is beautiful country. Just because it's been occupied by terrible people doesn't mean that it's good to see this beautiful country get obliterated. Now, there very much is I guess like a fuck around and find out dynamic here. They're getting what they voted for good and hard. But there's lots of people, this is what I'm saying, there's a lot of people there who did not vote for this, and they're still getting it good and hard. Okay, some stuff on Karen Bass. Yeah, we'll talk about Karen Bass here in just a minute. Mr. Oblivion says, as an 80s kid, I'm kind of glad he's still doing okay. Yeah. Steve Gutenberg was in a lot of stuff. He's like one of my favorite ones with him is Short Circuit. I was just watching the trailer for that just the other day. My wife says, my heart is broken for the memories washed away. Oh, okay. This is a gift from Grampy. Oh, excellent. Apparently my dad sent me this. Got a little torture device. I'm a collector of such torture devices. Okay. Thank you for all the chats here. Eastwood wants to know if your candy is made from parasitic bugs or carmine. Oh, there's probably a good chance of that. It's a bag of gummy lifesavers. I'm a sucker for these. Okay. Let's keep it going here. 50 minutes left. So there's a video here from this woman talking about the state of the insurance market.
I know I'm not supposed to be here, but this is my parents' home.
I know the feeling.
And they just they got canceled from their fire insurance. So they're dealing with this. They're 90 years old. And through the state of California, because of this, they're 90 years old. That they've lived in this house for 75 years, and they've had the same insurance. And these insurance people decided to cancel their fire. And we're going through this, and it just happened, and they have no fire insurance. So thank you, California insurance companies, supporting residents who pay taxes and love California. And they wonder why people leave California.
First and foremost, you did get your parents out safely.
I live in Sierra Madre. My parents are in Sierra Madre, but...
And now you know that it is under evacuation as well, north of Sierra Madre Boulevard.
Yeah, I snuck here. You know, there's a will, there's a way. Probably shouldn't do it, but you know what? Under the circumstances, send me to jail. That's fine.
It is unbelievable what's happening here to the neighbors. Your parents' house is still standing. You had a hose. You're doing what you can.
I mean, I have a hose. It doesn't compare to these beloved neighbors that I've known. I was born and raised in this house, and I live in Sierra Madre, and I'm now 62 years old. And this is the house I was born and raised in, and I've never moved out of Pasadena, Sierra Madre, Hastings Ranch. You know,
well, let me tell you, it does help for people who aren't here to know what's happening. So you sharing that story, it does a service. I came up to you without even asking your name.
My name is Lynn Levin Guzman. This is the Levin household. I'm a nurse for over 30 years in emergency room. I deal with fire all the time and firefighters. And this situation here, luckily people got out because those are my patients. The people who are not so fortunate to get out.
As you mentioned, let's just hope everyone's okay. Lynn, I'm going to let you get back to it. And for you taking the time, we thank you. To your parents, we wish them the best as well. As I send it back to you, there's Lynn again with the hose. She's using a garden hose, getting the awnings, getting the roof of the house, doing anything she can. We say that as the embers are blowing directly on us here in the Upper Hastings Ranch community. She's here, her brother's here, and you know that there's let me tell you, the majority of the homes in this community are still standing. We drove past many on the lower side that are still standing, but the night is young.
Absolutely, a long way to go, and a courageous woman at that, and she does bring up a great point that we should talk a whole lot more about, and that is the fact that so many people are now uninsured when it comes to a fire.
I know.
I see the commentary about the masks in the chat here. This is absolutely a time when, if I was out there, I would be wearing a mask. The air quality in this area here is going to be like the worst in the country by orders of magnitude. I remember being in the area when even with the wind blowing away from us where we were, when the fires were getting within several miles of us, the air quality is terrible. You like blow in your nose and just it's black. Like, this is absolutely a time where if I was outside in this area, I would 100% be wearing a mask. So Justine Bateman says, a couple of years ago, insurance companies put in the necessary request to the state of California to raise their rates. They were denied. So most of them pulled out of California. It's been extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get house insurance here since then. Many of these now destroyed houses may be uninsured because California wouldn't let the companies raise rates to compensate for past fires, etc. I saw a tweet from James Woods, who said that in his neighborhood, which is in the Palisades, in his neighborhood, one of the major insurers, he didn't name them, but I suspect it might have been State Farm. He said one of the major insurers just came through and eliminated all the plans in that neighborhood like 4 months ago. Here's some more on this. Jeremy Kaufman, insurance companies knew fires were likely in the Palisades, but since it's illegal to raise insurance prices, LOL California, they just dropped their customers instead. So this is cancellations by State Farm in California this last summer. Palisades had 1,600 plans canceled. West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Bel Air, Malibu, Topanga, Santa Monica. Last I saw, Santa Monica is now being evacuated. There's an mandatory evacuation order for something like 15,000 people in Santa Monica, which, for those who don't know, this is going from Malibu, which is more remote from LA. This is moving toward LA. Santa Monica is like, as you're coming down PCH, Santa Monica is basically where when you first start getting into the city. Brentwood, 1,300 people. This is going to be a big radicalization moment for a lot of people. Here's from 2021. This is LAFD firefighters speaking out against a vaccine mandate during a protest in Santa Monica.
But now, after the worst time of COVID, after the largest, most deadly spike, downtrends in death, my employer, a governing body, is deciding to mandate a rushed vaccine. Not only that it will be mandate, but it's a condition of my employment. We've gone from essential frontline worker to next on the chopping block. I agree. Such times of uncertainty really force me to think and examine my surroundings. The job that I love, the job that I poured my heart and soul into is being threatened. Anything that gets put into my body is my choice. I refuse. I do not comply.
This video hits a little different when you see the headlines coming out from the LAFD fire chief saying that they don't have enough firefighters. Gee, maybe if you didn't run a bunch of your best people out, you would have had enough. California spent $11 billion to build 1,600 feet of high-speed rail, all while the fire hydrants in Pacific Palisades were broken. Here's their $11 billion of high-speed rail. This from Elizabeth McDonald at Fox. She says, a check of Los Angeles' budget shows Democrat LA Mayor Karen Bass cut about $20 million from LA's budget for fire services in this current fiscal year, and she demanded even higher cuts. This as massive wildfires devastate Los Angeles, with at least 80K evacuating, and local reports show the LA Fire Department is running out of water. Mayor Bass had proposed about $23 million in cuts to the LA Fire Department. She was on a trip with a Biden delegation to Ghana overseas as local LA residents hammer her, saying she should resign. $13 million of the cuts to the LA Fire Department were for operating supplies, plus larger cuts to salaries. Now, this reminds me, I had the other... Where was that? Let me just open this tab. Because I had a couple other things that I bookmarked in my pre-show cigarette after I'd got all my tabs opened. This There's this one and this one and this one. So first one was a follow-on from with Jeremy Kauffman. He said not to take the blame away from the government, but what were the fire insurance premiums in LA like? Did the insurance companies accurately price the risk, or did they get it wrong too? And he says, LOL, it's illegal to accurately price fire insurance in California because of course it is. Policy regulations. California's regulatory framework limits insurers' ability to adjust premiums based on wildfire risk. For example, Proposition 103 requires prior approval from the state before insurers can increase rates, and insurers must base rates on past losses, not future projections. And here's the one I was talking about. LA Scanner says there are not enough firefighters, according to the LAFD chief. Matt Walsh said Los Angeles deliberately set out to exclude white men from becoming firefighters, and now they don't have enough firefighters to prevent their city from burning to the ground. DEI is a cancer that destroys everything it touches. And here is the Karen Bass getting completely bodied by a goofy-looking little limey.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster? No apology for them? Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana while this was unfolding back home? Madam Mayor, let me ask you just again, have you anything to say to the citizens today as you return?
No. Hold on 1 second.
Madam Mayor, just a few words for the citizens today as you return to deal with the catastrophe.
Can you take this down?
David, as you say, she wasn't very keen to answer any of your questions there. And fire chiefs are also admitting that they just don't have enough personnel to take out the fires.
Yeah, they're fighting all sorts of challenges. They're talking about a water shortage. There are reports of fire hydrant failures. They've been unable to use firefighting aircraft for much of the day due to the smoke that is billowing ominously from the hills where the wildfires are raging. And I suppose despite that political storm, this is, of course, at its heart, a human story, because we've now 80,000 people evacuated. Tens of thousands of others are on standby to be evacuated. 2 lives have been lost in the Eaton fire, which is what's causing the consequence behind us. The city's iconic landscape almost shrouded completely by the smoke. And they're really just taking it one step at a time, hoping at some stage the wind's going to change direction or to die down, and that they're going to be able to get this fire under control.
I said this morning. In the not-so-distant past, selling out one's constituents for mass abuse and corruption, as UK and California politicians have, was ample justification for being dragged into the streets and publicly hanged, burned, dismembered, etc. Now, anything short of that ought to be seen as a mercy. There's no doubt in my mind that this woman was boater squatted into, to use a euphemism, I still don't know how jumpy YouTube is with this stuff, but that she was boater squatted into office. Of course, we still have to meme. Los Angeles, still burning to the ground. Mayor of Los Angeles, I'm on my break. Very sassy black woman. She's on her break. A couple more on these. Cernovich says, Los Angeles mayor's on vacation in Africa. Los Angeles Fire Department chief is a DEI advocate. Biden administration stopped doing controlled burns. The fire hydrants don't have water. This is Democrats' supermajority rule. And from John Lefebvre, LA County Fire Department donating surplus supplies to Ukraine's first responders. LA County firefighters sending extra equipment to first responders in Ukraine as war drags on. Extra equipment. That extra equipment might be pretty valuable right about now. Captive Dreamer says, looks like they get made good on their promise. This is NPR from June of 2023. Firefighting is mostly white and male. A California program aims to change that. Here is the Los Angeles Fire Department chief. Commentary from Lee Wolf here is, this looks borderline criminal now that we know there is no water in the fire hydrants. More on the fire hydrants here in a moment, but this is the fire chief.
I'm super inspired.
She took time out of her already busy schedule to tell us about her vision for the department's future.
She's so busy.
One that includes a 3-year strategic plan to increase diversity.
People ask me, well, what number are you looking for? I say, I'm not looking for a number. It's never enough.
It's never enough.
100 city firefighters, only 115 are women right now. She's already looking at ways to change that. She's quick to point out that doing so has a greater...
We need more people as first responders who are defined by their physical weakness and lesser response capacity in emergency situations. That's a great plan.
Purpose, attracting the best and brightest for the job.
They feel included, they feel valued, and they feel part of a cohesive team.
The chief also checks another box when it comes to inclusivity and diversity at this department. She's a proud member of the LGBTQ community.
That just kind of opens the door of people that thought, wow, I didn't even know that was an opportunity for me. I'm super...
It just gets better. LAFD chief Kristen Crowley is too busy covering up for her command staff's issues to actually do her job. From a 2023 story by the Gus Report, Deputy Chief Katie Kepner, another LGBTQ hire, was promoted despite audio and video evidence of her terrorizing her domestic partner being presented to command. And in those October 2021 videos, Christina Katie Kepner, then assistant chief of the Los Angeles Fire Department, violently attacked her then live-in domestic partner while repeatedly threatening to kill both of them. The victim's name is withheld because she is irrefutably a domestic violence victim. Many such cases. According to the videos, their dispute appears to have been sparked by Kepner's rage at the victim for speaking with LAPD detective Scarlett Martinez, with whom the victim believes Kepner had a side relationship and says may be Kepner's current domestic partner. This is beyond parody. A bunch of dykes running the fire department into the ground. And now the largest fire, most destructive fire in California history, destroying these beautiful, magnificent neighborhoods. This is going to radicalize a lot of people. The LA Fire Department passed a racial equity plan to end, quote, systemic, institutional, and structural racism in LA. Part of it is a chart to map out the race of every employee to make sure they're racially diverse enough. It's just beyond parody. To see a massive destructive event like this and the sheer intersection, the intersection of sheer incompetence, it has been actively destroyed. This region on the planet is being actively destroyed by the worst people. Last night in the Palisades fire, Los Angeles DWP couldn't turn the fire hydrants on, and it appears from footage of downed live wires, didn't turn the power lines off. According to the LA Times, Bass's pick, the Karen Bass, her pick for manager of the DWP is paid $750,000. Look at this screenshot. This is the head of LADWP, making nearly twice as much as her predecessor, with the banner up here, 2 dead and more than 1,000 homes, businesses, and other buildings destroyed in LA County fires. It's criminal. These are horrible and competent people just looting the region for themselves and their friends. Yeah, it looks like a man. So why are the fire hydrants dry? Can you imagine this? You're right on the coast of the largest ocean on the planet. You're literally a coastal city. And there's no water. Some of these fires are literally over the water. I saw Moon Shadows is gone in Malibu. It's literally built out on like a pier over the water. And yet there's no water. How could this be?
My heart goes out, obviously, to the people with their homes, and I'm watching the small businesses around us go up in flames. This is people's livelihoods, so it's devastating. But what is most concerning to me is our first responders and our firefighters who are trying to battle this. There's no water in the Palisades. There's no water coming out of the fire hydrants. This is an absolute mismanagement by the city. It's not the firefighters' fault, but it's by the city. And I'm going to be very honest. We've got a mayor that's out of the country.
Rick Caruso, real estate developer, he was the Republican candidate that Karen Bass beat out in 2022 for the LA mayoral election. And there was some real funny business around that, where he was looking real strong, and then all of a sudden, she came from behind and won.
And we've got a city that's burning, and there's no resources to put out fires. So if you look at your pictures, you don't see the firefighters there because there's nothing they can do. And it looks like we're in a third world country here. Mm-hmm. And we've got a lot of tough questions that we need to ask the mayor and the city council and our representatives and the county representatives. Why didn't you work to mitigate this? What was your brush mitigation program? I heard you earlier talking about it's been dry because there hasn't been rain. That's not the biggest problem here. The brush up in these hills that are controlled by the city and the county, I would bet you that if they haven't been handled, mitigated, pruned, removed for probably 30 or 40 years. This was a disaster waiting to happen. And what's predictable is preventable. And who's paying the price are all of these people in their homes and their businesses tonight. Now, we'll rebuild, but the majority of this community is going to have a tough time rebuilding their lives.
Yet another American community now that has been devastated is going to have a difficult time rebuilding their lives, as he says, as the Biden administration sends more money to the Ukraine. Amy says, didn't they just have a 1,000-year storm this summer? Where's all that water? They decided not to keep it. It just ran back out into the ocean. They funneled all this water that came in. They've got a pretty a relatively sophisticated way of managing all this excess water because they don't get it all that often. When they do, it could be really destructive. There was videos of these massive rivers, just water just streaming. I remember seeing videos of like condos getting obliterated in San Diego. Water just streaming right out into the ocean. Just gone. Be nice to have that water now, wouldn't it? But you got a bunch of third worlders in charge. And here's Biden. This is just the capper. Just the absolute capper of the most surreal presidential administration we've ever had. He's kind of a little hard to hear here, so you'll have to listen close.
We got this notification yesterday that our home is about to burn down. Today, the parents are maybe still standing, I'm not sure. But the good news is, I'm a great-grandfather as of today. I have a granddaughter. And baby girl, a baby boy. So I remember this day for a lot of long reasons.
The good news is, I'm a great-grandfather. It just... he doesn't understand. He doesn't have any idea what's going on around him. But this is just the capper of the worst, by far, presidential administration of all time. He comes out and says, the good news is I'm a great-grandfather. Oh, good. Glad for you, man. That's great news. I'm glad that you've got some good news. These people's houses are gone. They've got no insurance. Many of these houses are like generational. That lady, her family's lived there for 75 years. Her parents are in their 90s. That's the thing about a lot of these Palisades homes. A lot of them are family homes that have been there for a long time. They're gone. Uninsured, obliterated, gone. But hey, he's a great granddad, so good for him. Now, this is interesting timing. I was talking about the Sierra Club just yesterday. Quite a photo here. Isaiah Taylor, who's one of our Gundo boys, founder of Valar Atomics, another Lord of the Rings reference there, making nuclear reactors. He says, maintaining forests with floor clearing and controlled burns is straightforward, low-cost, effective, and unpopular with environmentalists for reasons that are impossible to understand. Isabel here says, is that true? I've heard people saying that environmentalists oppose controlled burning but haven't checked. He said, unfortunately, yes. In 2007, the Sierra Club successfully sued the Forest Service to prevent them from creating a categorical exclusion, or a CE, to NEPA for controlled burns. The technical term is fuel reduction. The CE would have allowed the Forest Service to conduct burns without having to perform a full EIS, the median time for which is 3.5 years. John Muir Project helped to claw back the full scope of categorical exclusions from the 2018 Omnibus Bill as well, though some easement did make it through. In 2021, the outgoing Trump BLM was served with the following notice of intent to sue by the Center for Biological Diversity for their fuel reduction plan in the Great Basin. BLM backed away from the plan. This would be Bureau of Land Management. Backed away from the plan after the transition. These are specific cases, but the cumulative outcome is that California state agencies don't even try it because they know they'll be sued. These people need to be I can't say that. How many more of these sorts of events do we need to have before these people just get thrown out on their ear? They're no longer taken seriously. These are not serious people. They don't deserve a voice. They don't deserve a vote. Their opinion does not merit being heard. Maybe they deserve to run a gas station. I'll bet you they're good at checking items out. That's what they're qualified for. I don't care how many papers they can write or how many lawsuits they can file. They should be grateful that we allow them to have a job, period. We don't just put them in the Pacific. He says, when you finally come to understand exactly how much progress in industry in America is held back by exactly this type of network of donations, favors, lawsuits, and special interests, you'll never be the same. Shout out to our young Gundo boys for raising for spreading the good word, I suppose. Stephen Miller, as usual, he's on point. When you orient every level of society around social agendas, political agendas, ideological agendas, racial agendas, gender agendas, everything but merit, competence, performance, and the national interest, it will always end in catastrophe. The age of the vengeful son is here. It's hard not to Fed post. As Brandon Walsh says, all of our solutions are Fed posts. If there is a bright side to this, beyond Joe Biden being a great granddad, if there is good news out of this, it's that the popular will is turning. These sorts of things have happened before, but they haven't happened in the middle of this time of great transition with the vibe shift fully underway. But now, you've got the UK story, which the story there is incompetent, malevolent bureaucrats and politicians facilitating the mass abuse of their population. And now we have this story in California of incompetent, malevolent bureaucrats and politicians facilitating the abuse of their population. These people need to be thrown out. I advocate that we be merciful with them. Their crimes, in many cases, probably justify what I was talking about in the tweet that I shared just a minute ago about what would have happened to people like this, I don't know, maybe as recently as, in some parts of the world, 70 years ago, 100 years ago for sure, 150 years ago, no question whatsoever. But if justice is not brought in a controlled, disciplined fashion, it's going to be executed in an uncontrolled, undisciplined fashion. And I don't want that. There will be justice. I would prefer that justice to be controlled and disciplined. Because I know just how dark it can get if it's not. But this has to change. It's going to change. Human beings are not capable of tolerating this level of sheer incompetence and malevolence indefinitely. It just won't happen. And I pray that people in positions of leadership have the stones and the backbone and the discipline to do what's necessary so that it doesn't fall to the alternative options. Some Leaf bucks from one of our favorite Leafs. Slosher says, these are the fruits that liberalism bears. Indeed. Indeed. And now, in this time, I remember hearing about a lot of this stuff with the big fires that happened when we lived in the greater LA area. But then we had to undergo 4 years of this insanity. And this feels like, from looking at the commentary that's happening from all of this feels like a moment that's going to change a lot of people. Having this happen now, after the vibe shift, after people started to feel free to actually speak and express themselves again, it's becoming cool to like Trump in public, to speak your mind, to be proud to be an American. It's becoming cool again, which is important. In order for these sorts of things to happen, the normies need to see them as cool. Now the normies are seeing this sort of thing as cool, and now this is happening with the new Twitter. The narrative has been set from the get-go. I hate to say don't let a good tragedy go to waste, but don't let a good tragedy go to waste. $5 from Samoa Bob. He says, climate change became an easy out for these inept politicians and policies. Yes. And none of them are true believers. None of these people are true believers. These are stupid people. These are vacuous, incompetent retards. They're just there to get theirs. They're there to line their pockets. They've insinuated themselves into this political machine. And they're going to say whatever their donors tell them are valuable things to facilitate the grift. They don't believe in anything except for enriching themselves. Which is the type of behavior that leads to guillotines. All right. I got a few more stories here as we got about 20 minutes left until Jason gets started. Thank you for the super chats, guys. Hickman at shagbark_hick post this picture. Actually, here, gotta drill down a little bit further. Mega Varma Art says, controversial opinion, people shouldn't move out of their ancestral homes. At the very least, the home should stay in the family for generations. The community should grow around them and improve with time. The home, once paid off, should belong to the family with no other payments except utilities. The house itself should be built to withstand the climate it's built in and time. We know this is possible because centuries-old houses still exist today. It should be illegal to build any cheap and fast houses at all. The Forever 21 houses made of paper that start deteriorating after 30 years should be banned. After 30 years? A lot of these start deteriorating after like a year. It's not natural for people to leave places that saw them grow, that saw their family Christmases and reunions, the family heirlooms and history kept in one place. Houses should be forever. This image here, Hickman says, this is part of why divorce is so evil. I grew up with my grandparents in a lovely old house. They always told me I'd inherit it till they got divorced and it was sold. Then I moved in with my mom in a beautiful canal-era house, expected to inherit it, till they divorced too. In the first house, they cut down the trees I planted as a boy and bulldozed my beloved herb garden. And the second house, pictured, is currently crumbling to ruins. Meanwhile, the money from the house sales has been spent. I will inherit nothing. Why do you think I've been so driven to buy property and hang on to it? Why do you think I've been obsessed with finding my forever home for the last few years? Our children will not be dispossessed of their inheritance. They will keep the home they grow up in. I insist on it because when you lose your childhood home, you feel kind of homeless for many years afterward. This resonates. My parents, we built the house in, I think it was 99, 98, 99, somewhere in there. Built the house. Lived there for 10 years. Went away to high school, came back home. Went away to college, came back home. And then their plan was to move. This was in Western Washington. Their plan was to move out to Eastern Washington. And they were going to sell the house, buy an RV, move out to Eastern Washington, buy some property, lay down a slab, put up like a roof, and park the RV underneath it, and then build a house out there. This was in 2008. Drove out to Eastern Washington a bunch of times to scope out property. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. Very, very remote in a lot of places. And then the housing market collapsed right about the time that they listed the house. They were expecting to, I think on net, they were gonna wind up with something like 100 to 120K, somewhere in that vicinity. And they might have been more than that, actually, like 150. And the housing market cratered. When they finally sold the house, my dad told me this after the fact. I wasn't totally clued into what was happening at the time, but my dad told me that if they'd sold the house a week later, they would have lost money on it. They would have written a check to sell the house. As it was, they netted out $2,500 and had to rapidly change course, rented a house, completely scrapped the plans for moving to Eastern Washington, wound up buying another house nearby a few years later that they've now been in for 12 or 13 years, and they're never going to leave. That's going to be their house for good now. They've put a ton of money into it. My mom's built an incredible garden. If you're in the King Pill Discord, you saw pictures I posted when I was back there in October for Eastwood's birthday. This is part of this. Part of what has divorce he mentions. The university system encouraging student loans, federally subsidized student loans, encouraging kids to go away to college and leave. And then inheritance taxes. All of these things are evil. Just plainly. They're just evil. They can't be tolerated. You can't maintain a civilization. You can't maintain a people like this. Encouraging children to leave their families. I live far remote from my parents, and it weighs on me. I grew up with a huge family. There was something like, I think in my immediate vicinity of where I grew up, we totaled everyone up because we had a big family gathering one time, and there was close to 100 people from the whole extended family, all right in that one area in Western Washington. We had big family birthday parties. The family does monthly birthday parties for everyone who has a birthday in that month because there's so many. And there's usually anywhere from 30 to 50 people at these parties. I grew up with a huge family. And it's hard now being away from it. It's if you haven't experienced life close to family, you're missing out. Because I've experienced both. I've had life close to family and life far removed from family. And the life far removed from family sucks. It's hard. Having grandma and grandpa nearby, immediately available for babysitting, having kids grow up with their cousins, aunts and uncles, grandparents. This is part of this. There's so many different forces that have driven this, but the atomization of all of us has destroyed our civilization. This is why we don't live in a civilization anymore. One of many reasons. But we will rebuild. The forces are underway now. We will rebuild our nation. We will have a civilization once again. The Trumpenreich will last for generations. John Carter at Martian Wordlord added on to this. He says, my parents never got divorced, but my father died relatively young, leaving my mother alone in the big, beautiful country home that my parents built before I was born, that I and my siblings grew up in. A few years ago, she sold it so that she could move to a smaller house in a place where the amenities were within walking distance. The old family home was too large for her to take care of, and it was remote. Just buying groceries was a 20-minute drive. Her new house is a generic, characterless, suburban, modern build. The family home she traded it for was deeply embedded with memories. My father's wood carvings decorating every surface. The pond in the fern garden where the fish from my sister's wedding reception still swam. The pet cemetery where our childhood menagerie was buried. The spruce tree in the driveway that was planted when I was a toddler and now towered over the house. The workshop I spent a year helping my father build before cancer took him. If ever there was a property that was meant to be passed through the generations, that was it. That home was my anchor, the one geographical constant in my life. I've been very nomadic in my adult life, but the family home was always there, eternal and unchanging to return to. And it wasn't just about the home, but also the land, the lake, the forest, the hills. It was eternal until it wasn't. And when it was gone, it felt like a hole had been dug in my soul. My mother didn't want to sell it. She knew how important it was to everyone. But she was getting old. Frankly, we all worried about her all alone out there in the woods. And the simple truth was that none of us could take it over. We either didn't live in Canada or lacked the financial resources to maintain a property that size or just didn't want to live full-time in the middle of nowhere. If there's a moral here, I guess it's that divorce isn't the real issue, it's mobility. People's lives pick them up and take them far from where they were born for work or love or adventure. The children scatter to the winds every generation. That's been the pattern in my family at least for over a century. And when people are mobile like that, it's impossible to build anything truly lasting. Elias here says, great post. I'm going through a similar situation myself. The house will be sold this summer. Ironically enough, although I'm letting my childhood home go, I intend my future house to last in the family for generations. My father probably thought the same. I wonder what I can do differently to make it happen this time. And John Carter says, this is something I think about a lot. It's extremely difficult to establish a physical legacy of this kind. It requires binding subsequent generations to the property while the centrifugal forces of the world align against tearing them away. He says, yes, exactly. I hope having experienced of how the world pulled me away from my family home helps in countering that same force in the home I built for my children. This is why it's so significant, because it's so difficult to establish a physical legacy like this. It's why it's so significant, why it's so important. Little Henry Ford note here. Henry Ford paid his workers $1,560 per year, $5 a day with a day off. That was worth 75 ounces of gold. Henry Ford's unskilled labor workers made $142,500 per year. You are being robbed. $143,000 a year for quote-unquote unskilled labor workers. We can learn much from Mr. Henry Ford. Uncommon Sense says, think about when Henry Ford put in the $5 a day wage. It was 1914. Assuming a 40-hour work week and a 52-week year, his workers were making $25 a week and $1,300 a year. What was the average cost of things? Model T car, $550. Average house, $3,500. Could you pay off your house with 3 years of your salary today? Can you buy 2.5 cars a year with your salary? Also remember that income taxes were virtually non-existent to most Americans in these years. We must return. We must return. We have to go forward. We can't go back. We can't go back. We have to go forward. But we must return. We're getting inklings that this is going to happen. The forces are aligning to facilitate this sort of thing. But the only way that it will be lasting is if we do our part. The elites can only do so much. There's a lot of, elite theory has been a thing. It's ever talks about the elites, and you got all these conspiracies, and you got all the billionaires and the schemers and the NGOs and all this. But they can only do so much. If we collectively, we the people, if we have a Chud uprising, not an uprising to foment a revolution and overthrow governments and all this, but a Chud uprising to build our civilization, to begin against all forces, against all odds, to begin reinstantiating our lifestyle, building a future for our people. We're the ones who can make it permanent. The only trust the plan is become the plan you want to trust. Have faith that the Lord will provide. Have faith that there are good people out there who are working toward the same ends. But ultimately, to make these sorts of changes lasting, we have to do it ourselves. We can't just demand other people do it for us. It can't just be, change this policy, get rid of that thing, do away with income taxes, get rid of inheritance taxes, make it easier to remote work, whatever. All these different things, those are all good. But those don't solve problems. Those just open the door for us to solve the problems. Let me catch up on some of your comments here before I go to the very last story that I've got. Let's see. You guys have been jamming in here today. Multi-generational home pilled. Property is generational wealth. There's going to be a lot that's available. It's going to get real cheap here pretty soon. Yeah, modern houses are built like trash compared to older homes. And this is part of, I've talked about how anything built in America, made in America, is going to become like the hurdles are being removed for anybody who wants to build something in America. And high quality, handcrafted, or not necessarily handcrafted, but high quality, made in America things, demand is going to be skyrocketing for such things. One of these would be homes. Building high quality homes. It's difficult. It's like a premium thing. You're not going to be able to maintain super high margins with it. But there's going to be a market for it. If you're someone who can contribute to that market, start moving yourself now. Start positioning yourself to take advantage of the elimination of regulations, the onshoring of American manufacturing, the freeing up of U.S. energy policy. Get out ahead. Get that first mover advantage. Mr. Oblivion says, my father lost the land he inherited due to legal issues related to a drug habit. It's taken my brother and I 20 years to start over and get something paid off to pass down. Shout out to you guys, man. CB says, selling the family farm is one of the system's greatest sins. Indeed. And for some of these people, like it's kind of like to befriend a boomer. Like some of us, it might be easy to be angry at your parents or your grandparents for not keeping it, not retaining the family farm or the family home or the property or whatever it is. But you also got to recognize that for many of them, they either didn't appreciate the significance of it, or they didn't have a choice. All the economic incentives were, like, individual people can't just stand up against the full weight and force of these global economic forces. So there has to be, like John Carter's talking about, like there's a reality here where you can't. Some of these things you're just going to have to let go of and start over again. And you can't beat yourself up about that either. There's no utility in that. But you could just commit yourself to starting over and rebuilding yourself. And this is part of building our civilization. TC says remote work is massive for keeping generational homes. Don't let any oligarch try to take it from you. And I think that there's a really good point to that. And I think that this is another thing we've talked about on the show here in the past, is that there's going to be a great opportunity to be able to actually repopulate some of these more remote areas because of things like Starlink and remote work and the ability to do digital work or online work, or to set up, I don't know, a CNC machining, what am I thinking of here? Like operations, start manufacturing your own stuff out there. I was having a conversation in the DMs with someone the other day. I won't name him in case he doesn't want to be aired out. But I think it'd be interesting to have a whole episode on this. That once upon a time, like every little town had its own vendors. You had your button maker and your blacksmith and your newspaper and all these little services, manufacturers. There's one in every single town. And everybody knew each other. So you had to build and protect your reputation big time because you could be taken out immediately. Now, these people weren't going to be, they were never going to become some sort of global overlord. They weren't going to be a billionaire. They weren't even going to be a millionaire. They were probably equivalent to something like an upper middle class wagee. But they owned what they had. They owned it. It was equivalent with their name, with their reputation. They knew everybody in the town. And I think we're going to be returning to something similar to that. As people grow more and more hostile to the great big tech companies and the globalization effects and the NGOs and all this sort of thing, and as it becomes easier to build things in America again, I think we're going to see a restoration of the small local businesses. A forward-thinking local businessman can grab can set up drone delivery of his stuff here locally and manufacture stuff in his garage, sell it online, use social media to his advantage start to get to know all of his neighbors. We can begin rebuilding our civilization using some of this advanced technology. You could sit around, you can think about all the negative effects of it, the atomization, the depersonalization, whatever, the globalization. You're just wasting time and energy that could be directed toward actually using some of these forces to rebuild our communities. Technology is a sword that cuts both ways. It can facilitate the visions of malevolent globalists, and it can also facilitate the visions of passionate, grounded, rooted localists. Just going to war with technology or spending all of your time wringing your hands about technocrats is not going to do anything for you or for anyone else. All right, we're just about to the start of Mr. Mirror and Chuck, so let me get to my very last story here. Oh, let me say this. Politically Catholic says, when you retire, you have nowhere to be and don't need the big McMansion you needed when you were raising your kids. Downsize and move closer to your kids to help out with your grandkids the way God intended. And I think multifamily homes are going to be making a comeback as well for a lot of reasons. Necessity and people desiring it. Mr. Oblivion says, I'm here for the craftsman architectural resurgence. Yes, build beautiful homes again. Architecture that heals the soul. So the very last thing here, we get a little schizo note. John Doyle says, why is everyone having weird dreams? What's going on? And I said, I checked in with the schizos, and they say it's the Schuman resonance. I posted this a couple days ago. Schizo time. Have any of you noticed a sudden uptick in the vividness and memorableness of your dreams over the past week? It's been stark for me, and I'm seeing a bunch of schizos talking about it and attributing it to some drastic change in the Schuman resonance. I'm curious to know for you guys. Leave me a comment or tweet at me and let me know if this is happening with you as well, because it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing, and I'm seeing more people talking about it. The only people that seem to have any credible explanation of what it might be are the schizos saying that something has changed with the Schuman resonance, which is it's something like the latent harmonics of the planet. There's weird stuff going on right now. Maybe it has to do with solar activity, or the Earth's crust is about to shift. The Earth's gravitational field is doing weird stuff. Who knows? But something's going on, and a lot of people are starting to know this. My son has been being a lot more active at night and seeming to have a lot more dreams. It's definitely happened to me. Where suddenly, just I think it was on the first of the year, suddenly I started having really vivid dreams. Very vivid, very memorable, very emotionally resonant. They haven't been really like bad dreams or nightmares for me. They've more been just kind of like emotionally evocative. But they've been very, very clear. And I'm not a big dreamer. I kind of come and go, but it's been consistent now for almost a week. I've had really, really vivid dreams, and I didn't change anything personally. And now I'm seeing lots of other people who are talking about it. So I'm very curious. If any of you guys have noticed that, let me know. Leave me a comment and tell me. Or you can tweet at me, at RealKingPilled. I appreciate you guys showing up for another episode of the ASTROLABE. Still got 100 watching, 67 likes. Do me a favor, get me some likes before I wrap here. I'm going to give you guys Hulk in just a minute, but let me do my housekeeping. Go to the King Pill Discord and sign up, kingpill.com. It's the best way to support the show. If you don't want something with nearly that much commitment, then there's a couple other options to help me pay the bills here. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/kingpilled. Link is in the description. Also, there's a link to the Cash App. You can send something there. You can also leave a tip on Twitter at RealKingPilled. There's a little tip button on my profile. If you go look, you can either use Venmo or Bitcoin. I'm very happy if you want to send me any of your Bitcoin. I'm glad to collect that from you. And leave me a comment for the algorithm. If you're listening on the podcast, 5-star rating and review. Helps us get this out in front of more people. Keep an eye out for more stuff coming soon. We've teased it in the past. There's a link in the description where you can go get your Patriot drop. We're getting more rumors that more Patriot drops are coming soon. So be on the lookout for that. People in the King Pill Discord or those who are have gotten their Patriot drop will be the first to know when it starts happening again. And also King Pilled Substack. If you go over there, it's free to subscribe, but that will get you the post with all of the links. And if something happens on YouTube and it gets pulled down, then the stream is there as well. And that pushes it out to all the audio podcasts. So if you'd like to listen to the audio version, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, whatever stupid Android shit you guys use. It's all out there. So leave me a like on your way out and go over, stay here, stay on this page, and we'll automatically redirect over to good friend of the show, Mir and Chuck Now. And you can go watch him, tell him that King Pilled sent you.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough.